Okay, so picture this. It's 1917. You're a teenage girl in Orange, New Jersey. You just got hired at a watch factory, and you get to paint tiny glowing numbers onto clock faces using this incredible new element called radium. The paint glows in the dark, your clothes glow, your hair glows. After your shift, you walk home looking like a ghost, and honestly, the girls at the factory think it's kind of fun. There's even a trick they teach you. To get the brush tip really fine, you put it between your lips. Just a quick dab. Everyone does it. It's completely safe, they tell you. Within 5 years, your jaw will crumble, your teeth will fall out, and you'll be dead at 25. This actually happened. And it's just one of 5 dark history facts that'll change how you see the world. Let's get into it. The Radium Girls. That's the name history gave them, and it doesn't even come close to capturing what happened. In 1917, the United States Radium Corporation opened a factory in Orange, New Jersey, hiring hundreds of young women to paint watch dials with radium-based paint. This was World War I. Glow-in-the-dark watches were essential equipment for soldiers in the trenches. The women were paid about $20 a week, good money for working-class girls at the time. Most of them were teenagers, some were as young as 14. And here's where it gets dark. The company knew radium was dangerous. The scientists and executives working with it used lead shields, tongs, and protective gear. They never touched the stuff directly. But the dial painters' teenage girls, remember, were told it was harmless. More than harmless. The company promoted it as a health tonic. They literally told the girls the radium would give them rosy cheeks. So the girls did exactly what they were trained to do. They used their lips to shape the brush into a fine point. Dip, lip, paint hundreds of times per shift, every single time swallowing a tiny amount of radium. They didn't just do this for a week or a month. Some of them worked there for years, lip pointing their brushes thousands and thousands of times. And radium, as it turns out, behaves a lot like calcium in the human body. It goes straight to your bones, and it stays there, emitting radiation. The first signs were toothaches, then loose teeth, then teeth falling out entirely. Dentists would pull a tooth and the entire jawbone would come with it. Then the anemia. Then sarcoma's aggressive bone cancers that deformed limbs and created massive tumors. Parts of the jaw literally dying and rotting away while the woman was still alive. By 1924, multiple dial painters were dead. Amelia Maggia, the first to die, was 25. The doctor listed her cause of death as syphilis to avoid a scandal. It wasn't syphilis. Her jaw had been so radioactive that if you held a Geiger counter to her grave decades later, it still went off. The company fought back hard. They hired medical experts to claim the women had syphilis or were just generally unhealthy. They stalled in court. They refused to take responsibility. But the women fought harder. 5 of them, Grace Fryer, Edna Hussman, Catherine Schaub, Quinta McDonald, and Albina Larice, became known as the Radium Girls. They sued. And even as their bodies were falling apart, even as some of them couldn't walk into the courtroom without help, they kept showing up. In 1928, they won. The settlement wasn't enough. Most of them were dead within a few years. But their case changed everything. It established the right of workers to sue their employers for occupational diseases. It led to the first workplace safety regulations in the United States. The Radium Girls didn't just die for nothing. Their suffering created labor laws that have saved millions of lives since. Now let me ask you something. If you had a headache 7,000 years ago, what would you do? Drink some water, lie down, maybe chew on some bark and hope for the best? Ancient humans had a different solution. They drilled a hole in your skull on purpose while you were awake. This practice is called trepanation. And before you write it off as some one-off weird thing, know that archaeologists have found trepanated skulls on every continent. Europe, Africa, Asia, the Americas. This wasn't one culture getting creative. This was a global human practice that lasted for thousands of years. The process was about what you'd expect from Stone Age brain surgery. No anesthesia. A sharp stone tool, sometimes a drill made from flint or obsidian. The surgeon would drill, cut, or scrape into the person's skull until they removed a piece of bone about the size of a coin. And here's where it gets weird. A lot of these people survived. We know this because archaeologists have found skulls where the bone around the hole shows signs of healing that only happens if you live for months or years after the procedure. Some skulls show evidence of multiple trepanations. You read that right. Someone had a hole drilled in their head, survived, and then came back for another one. Why would anyone do this twice? The leading theory is that trepanation was used to treat head injuries, relieve pressure from swelling after a blow to the skull. It's brutal, but it's also not entirely wrong. Modern medicine uses a similar procedure called a craniotomy for the same reason. They were onto something. But here's where it crosses into dark history territory. Some trepanations appear to have been done for spiritual or ritual reasons to release evil spirits, cure mental illness, or treat seizures. And the survival rate, even with stone tools, was surprisingly high. One study of prehistoric trepanned skulls found that around 60 to 70% showed signs of healing. So yeah, your ancestors were walking around with literal holes in their heads. And somehow, most of them were fine. The Victorians had a lot of strange customs, but this one is the kind of thing that makes modern people's skin crawl. In the mid-1800s, photography was expensive. Getting your picture taken was a rare event, something you might do once or twice in a lifetime. So when a family member died, especially a child, the grieving family had a problem. They probably didn't have any photos of them while they were alive. The solution? They took photos of them dead. Post-mortem photography was a massive trend in Victorian England and America. Families would dress their deceased loved ones in their best clothes, pose them in natural positions, and have professional portraits taken. The dead were often arranged to look alive, propped up in chairs, eyes painted onto the photo afterwards to make them appear open, holding toys or flowers. A family dressing their dead child, posing them in the living room, and sitting next to the body for a portrait that might take several minutes to expose. Sometimes, the dead person was the only subject. These weren't crime scene photos, these were keepsakes, something to remember them by. By the early 1900s, the practice faded as photography became cheaper and more accessible. People could afford photos while they were alive. The death portraits stopped, but thousands of these images still exist. And once you've seen one, you don't really forget it. Drowning in beer sounds like a joke, like something a guy would claim almost happened to him at a party. But this was real, and it killed people. October 17th, 1814, London. The Horseshoe Brewery on Tottenham Court Road had a massive iron vat full of fermenting beer. These vats were enormous. This one held the equivalent of about 1 million pints. The metal bands holding the vat together snapped at around 6 p.m. The vat burst, and here's where the domino chain starts. The force of the explosion ruptured several other vats nearby. Within seconds, more than 300,000 gallons of beer exploded into the brewery and poured into the street. Tottenham Court Road was a working-class neighborhood. Many people lived in basement apartments and tenements. The beer flooded through the streets in a wave reportedly 15 feet high. It crashed into homes, collapsed walls, and swept people off their feet. 8 people died. Some drowned in their basement apartments, trapped as beer poured in through the windows. Others were crushed by collapsing walls. One person reportedly died of alcohol poisoning from trying to drink as much free beer as possible, though that last one might be a bit of pub folklore. The smell apparently lingered for months. The brewery was taken to court, but the disaster was ruled an act of God, meaning no one was held legally responsible. The brewery actually got a refund on the taxes they'd already paid on the lost beer. The victims' families got nothing. So yeah, the London beer flood. 8 people dead, hundreds homeless, and a brewery that walked away with a tax rebate. History is the worst sometimes. Let me bring us back to ancient Rome. I know I've done a few Roman videos already, but this fact is too weird to skip. In ancient Rome, gladiators weren't just entertainment, they were medicine. Roman physicians believed that the blood of a freshly killed gladiator had healing properties. Specifically, they prescribed it as a treatment for epilepsy. Here's how it worked. A gladiator would be killed in the arena. Immediately after, someone would rush in and collect his blood while it was still warm. The patient would then drink it. And this wasn't some fringe folk remedy, this was mainstream Roman medicine. Pliny the Elder, one of the most famous Roman scholars, wrote about it approvingly. He claimed that epileptics should drink the blood of gladiators as though it were a draught of life. But here's the thing, there was a twisted logic to it. Romans believed that gladiators embodied vitality. They were strong, healthy, trained to peak physical condition. In Roman medical thinking, consuming the blood of a healthy person transferred that health to you. It wasn't random superstition, it was a medical theory. A horrifying, completely wrong medical theory. This practice continued for centuries. Some Roman doctors also recommended eating the liver of a slain gladiator, or drinking the blood of executed criminals. The fresher the blood, the more potent the cure. Modern historians have pointed out that gladiators may not have even been that healthy. They were often slaves, poorly fed between fights, and suffered repeated trauma. So on top of everything else, the medicine probably didn't work. But for centuries, epileptics in Rome paid for the privilege of drinking warm gladiator blood in the hope of a cure. So there you go. Factory girls poisoning themselves with radioactive paint while the company watched. Ancient brain surgery with a surprisingly high survival rate. Victorians taking family photos with corpses. A beer flood that drowned 8 people. And Romans drinking gladiator blood as medicine. And the thing is, every single one of these is documented. If you enjoyed the video, you might like this one. And comment below which history story you want to see next.